Is it possible that one day you might have a microchip in your brain? Have you already got one, Josh? I think he does. What do you reckon?
Negative.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the brain-machine interface and some developments in technology which could be coming to us harder and faster than we might think. So you've heard of the brain-machine interface, isn't it? What do you think it is? What would you say it is?
The brain-machine interface, isn't that reminiscent of Elon Musk's Neurolink, that sort of thing, where it's a means of allowing your brain to communicate with some kind of external technology with the idea of, say, connecting to the internet to retrieve information,
Without
things of that
having to
nature.
use your physical body at all. Yes, and let's talk about Neuralink for a bit. So it is another Elon Musk sort of future world breakthrough tech company. And this one focuses on transhumanism by attempting to make the world's first commercially viable brain-machine interfaces. Let's just take a look at this clip.
Pager still moves the joystick out of habit, but as you can see, it's unplugged. He's controlling the cursor entirely with decoded neural activity. Our goal is to enable a person with paralysis to use a computer or phone with their brain activity alone. Because they wouldn't be able to move a joystick, they would calibrate the decoder by imagining hand movements to targets. One of the things the Neuralinks allow Pager to do is to play his favourite video game, Pong. To control his paddle, on the right side of the screen, Pager simply thinks about moving his hand up or down. We've removed the joystick altogether. Now that he's up to speed, let's increase the difficulty and see how well Pager can play with the Neuralink.
That's pretty impressive, actually.
As you can see, Pager is amazingly good at mind Pong. He's focused, and he's playing entirely of his own volition. It's not magic.
Oh.
The reason Neuralink works is because it's recording and decoding electrical signals from the brain.
Is that a tube?
Yeah, so to be honest, that tube, I think, is the main innovation in this experiment, which appears to be an automated banana smoothie dispenser. It's some kind of reward mechanism, presumably,
assume
which
so,
they use
yeah.
to train the monkey.
When you're dealing with animal behavioural experiments and things like that, you've always got to have a reward stimulus to encourage the behaviour.
Yeah.
Not that I've necessarily carried out myself, but I understand the underlying philosophy behind it. Judging by the size of that monkey, he's been doing a lot of experimenting. But no, that's...
You think he's overweight?
Yes. But no, that's really impressive and also a little bit scary at the same time. I mean, sure, using it for people who are, say, paralysed must be, that's really innovative because it means that paralysis is not, you're not doomed to be bored. You actually have the ability to do something.
Well, you could potentially fully interact with society, which is quite something.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it must be life-changing for some people, that's for sure. But I can also think of the idea that you could play, say, a video game without ever having to move as well, which appeals to me a little bit, although the idea of having a chip in my brain is kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah, I think so.
I've got initial cold feet, even though seeing the technology is interesting and kind of a bit exciting. Just it's like a threshold that you kind of don't want to cross, putting like a foreign object in your brain of all places.
It's kind of a violation in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that I just can't kind of get comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. If we have a quick look at Neuralink's website, it's all very snazzy. We just scroll down and see what they've got. Breakthrough technology for the brain. They talk about understanding the brain. They've got science. They've got approach interfacing with the brain, and they have some engineering stuff as well. Engineering with the brain. So yeah, this seems like a classic sort of early stage, big idea type thing where they're powered by hype. And MIT agrees because they have described these demos as highly speculative and neuroscience theatre. There may be more hype than substance, perhaps, to part of Neuralink, at least for now. But, you know, Elon Musk has form. SpaceX got its rockets to up and down in the end, so who knows. But the private sector isn't the only place where scientists are champing at the bit for a bit of transhumanism. A recent publication from May last year by subunits of the Ministry of Defense and the Bundeswehr discussed the potential of radical technology, such as brain-machine interfaces, to transform the civilian world within the next 30 years. And we have a big report here. We won't be able to go through all of it because it's 110 pages long and it's full of different technologies and ideas, but I thought I would outline a few pieces. So it's called Human Augmentation, the Dawn of a New Paradigm, a Strategic Implications Project. Let's just scroll down. So here we go. The prospect of using technology to radically enhance human performance has been the subject of intense debate over the last 2 decades. Some analysis has been pessimistic and cautionary, downplaying just how imminent such technologies are. Other commentators are more optimistic and foresee an impending technological revolution that will radically transform every aspect of our lives. What is certain is that the field of human augmentation has the potential to transform society, security, and defense over the next 30 years. We must begin to understand the implications of these changes and shape them to our advantage now before they are thrust upon us. Seems like a fairly standard appeal. What are you thinking straight off the bat?
Well, I can kind of see where they're coming from. They're trying to be relatively neutral on the matter, aren't they? I'm somewhat sympathetic to the ideas that Elon Musk has put forward, that we either have to merge with machines or we become replaced with them, although it is a very scary and daunting thing, and I don't know how I feel about that either. But the logic behind it is certainly there.
Yeah.
I can at least understand where he's coming from, even though I can't pretend to understand any artificial intelligence or brain interfaces. I mean, I understand the brain somewhat, being a psychologist, but beyond that, not so much.
And then, because they're a defense company, they focus on their specialties. So they continue. Technology in warfare has traditionally centered on increasingly sophisticated platforms that people move and fight from, or artifacts that they wear or wield to fight with. Advances in the life sciences and converging developments in related fields are, however, beginning to blur the line between technology and the human.
That's not sinister whatsoever.
Yeah. Significant thought has already been given to what this means for artificial intelligence, automation, and robotics, but comparatively little time has been given to what this means from a human perspective. This project seeks to address the imbalance so that we can understand the potential of human augmentation and its implications.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then they go through the list of what they do here, and then they finish with, our potential adversaries will not be governed by the same ethical and legal considerations that we are, and they are already developing human augmentation capabilities. Our key challenge will be establishing advantage in this field without compromising the values and freedoms that underpin our way of life. So that sounds very noble, but I just remember, so I read the Mindspace report by the Behavioural Insights team, otherwise known as the Nudge Unit at government, not too long ago. And they also have these occasional high-minded ethical and moral
That's why I was laughing, yeah, just like our aims are...
And then the actual practical implementation of the technology seems to show no impact from that. From
so-called ethical consideration
right,
that
exactly.
they are patting themselves on the back about.
It does seem that the science moves first and the ethics catch up later if there's a gun pointed to the scientist's head. But anyway, I just thought there was a really interesting piece here where they talk about the human as a platform. So conceptualizing the human as a platform, they continue. They split it into 3 pieces: physical, psychological, and social. Physical performance is the capability to affect the physical environment and move within it. Strength, dexterity, speed, and endurance are key components, and there is often a trade-off between them. Psychological performance comprises cognition, emotion, and motivation. Cognition is the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. It includes processes such as attention, the formation of knowledge, long-term and working memory, reasoning, problem-solving, and decision-making. Emotion describes the subjective human experience and is closely linked with motivation, which is the force that energizes, activates, and directs behavior.
Sounds relatively accurate to me, although I wouldn't have necessarily described some of the stuff as they did, but it's more or less close enough.
It's curious to me that they spend about twice as long talking about the psychological part as physical or social.
Yeah, well, it kind of reveals their intentions in a way, doesn't it? If they're defining it in such high detail, then clearly the intention here is that they're going to change the psychological element more, or at least that's what they're most interested in.
Yes. Social performance, they finish, is the ability to perceive oneself as part of a group and the readiness to act as part of the team. It is founded on self-awareness and the ability to understand the behaviour of others. It is tightly linked to communication skills, collaboration and trust. The core tenet of social performance is group cohesion. Interesting. And then they go through a few principles like humantation is not a shortcut, human augmentation is not just tomorrow's business, we have to deal with it now. And then they have an interesting chart, which I quite like. Here we go. So what they've done is they've got a 2-axis chart here where they've planned all of the various technologies, and then in each quadrant they've put a message saying what they should do with it. So you have low to high transformative potential, so the impact it'll have on people and human society, and familiar to significant policy considerations. So whether it can be fitted into our current paradigm of thinking about policies, or whether we need to think about policies in a completely radically different way in order to use or harness these technologies. And then there's a list of 11 technologies which they've looked at here. They seem to think that the most transformative 3 technologies are going to be genetics, in terms of both germline modification and somatic modification, and bioinformatics. So they definitely have a biological slant here.
I don't know what those things are. Do you have any idea?
No.
Okay.
Which is terrible.
I put you on the spot there, I'm sorry.
No, you're quite right. I did look through it briefly, but I couldn't get a summary that's good enough.
But you are
to
right
really
that it is
present.
all biological, isn't it?
Yes. So this is basically gene editing, I believe, by the sound of it. So they later on in this report give the example of an experiment done in China where they essentially used CRISPR to edit the DNA of a human embryo to make it HIV resistant. That was the study that was done, and it caused a storm in the ethical world because this was before COVID-19 and we still cared about such things.
I mean, people are obviously naturally and rightfully skeptical of gene editing because it comes with a whole host of ethical questions and moral questions. But in terms of making people resistant to diseases, I think that's on the more noble side of things, wherever you may lie.
Yeah. So there's 2 things which they consider we're going to have to think about in a radically different way, apart from the genetic stuff, and that is invasive brain interfaces and passive exoskeletons.
Okay,
Interesting.
They both sound pretty scary. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's the invasion of the body that's the real clincher here. Because as long as a smartphone might be completely addicting and an essential part of life, you might not even be able to separate yourself from it for a moment. But the very fact that you can at least put it down or leave it at home if you want to is somewhat reassuring. But what if it was plugged into you and you can never take it out?
That'd be my worst nightmare.
Yeah, it sounds pretty awful, to be honest. And then there's a few other things they mention here, like pharmaceuticals, powered exoskeletons. It's good to know that, so with the 2 things which they're worried about, there are 2 precursors to that. One of them is non-invasive brain interfaces, which is like having a smartphone strapped to your head. So you can essentially scan using electromagnetic radiation. You can scan the brain like that.
So it would be like a hat, almost like a smartphone hat.
Pretty much. I would love it if they made them out of tin foil.
Dual purpose.
Yeah.
I think I'm imagining the exoskeletons. Have you seen the film Aliens?
Yes, I have.
I'm imagining the one where she's fighting the great big mother alien with this great big mech suit sort of thing, where it's kind of just allowing you to lift heavy objects and throw things around.
They pretty much conceive it like that, but I think their opinion of it is, it's probably very doable, but for whatever reason, they're not very interested in it because they think that although it makes a soldier, for example, really strong and really fast and really powerful, they seem to believe that that particular paradigm is going to be overtaken by all of the other stuff on this chart.
Okay, I can see that. I imagine also the strength benefits is going to be shadowed by the amount of upkeep and the lack of maneuverability of such an
and so on. It depends how they do it, and also you can see the relative maturity of the technologies here is determined by the size of the bubble. Finally, there's one more paragraph that I want to talk about, which I think really shows what perspective they're coming at this from. If we go to the next piece, Human augmentation is our first insight of what lies beyond today's information age. The coming of the biotech age. Sounds like a good name for a game series, to be honest.
It does, yeah.
The biotech age will see focus on the human grow. No longer will it be adequate to regard people merely as the means to operate the machine. The interdisciplinary nature of human augmentation will render our current industrial age model of defense ineffective. Defense must consider how it reorganizes to meet a future that will demand a human-centric approach to warfare, where the person is armed with the capabilities to integrate fully into a single platform. So there are two takeaways I can take from just looking at Neurolink and this. I think we are not going to see transhumans as the first wave of mammalian augmentation. I think we're going to have cyber monkeys to start with. And I think
monkey.
And I think
I don't know why that's funny.
There's going to be a point where when you join the army, there's going to be an implicit agreement that you're agreeing to get a load of microchips stuffed in your brain.
That's horrifying.
Yes.
But I would like to add that cyber monkeys does sound like a terrible 80s horror movie. The Attack of the Cyber Monkeys.
Coming to screens near you. But hopefully not a brain near you.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go over to lotuseaters.com to access all the premium content we have on the site, such as the contemplations that Josh and Thomas did together on the philosophical direction of the West. But if you'd like to find out what else is coming out on the site, you can always follow us at getter.com, with lotuseaters_com being the @. Thank you and goodbye.